Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
My God, it's full of stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by the future of pod enforcement, Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing fine. Everything's great. The news is wonderful. The world is in great shape. And we're here to talk about a kinder, gentler Robocop.
Yeah, yes, we're here to talk about Robocop, the TV show. In particular, we're talking about the pilot episode, the hour and a half long. It's a two-part, I suppose. It was put together. I watched it as a single episode. It's called "The Future of Law Enforcement," and I would say it's set. In fact, I want to get to how far after the film this thing is set because its timeline is all over the place. But it's some time after the events of the first of the trilogy of films, and Robocop is still on the street. OCP has reached the point of Delta City is now underway, and they are looking to create a Neuralink, a computer that can basically sort of manage all the computer systems in Delta City. And they bring in a scientist, what's his name? Dr. Cray Malado. Dr. Cray Z. Lazardo. Malado, played by Cliff DeYoung, who works from many things, to create his computer that requires a human brain to work. And so he starts killing off homeless people to do it. In addition to this, Murphy, or as Robocop, is on the streets for solving crimes with Madigan, the Officer Lois replacement, who also blows bubblegum. They want you to remind you of that. And also that Murphy's son, Jimmy, has gone on the run and is joining some gang. And there's a lot of other things sort of going on, but generally it's a pilot for a TV show. Guest star, let's just quickly go through some of the stars. Alex Murphy, Robocop, now played by Richard Eden. Yvette Nipper plays Detective Lisa Madigan. Blue Mankuma playing Sergeant Parks. Andrea Booth playing Diana Powers on Neurobrain. And then on some other people that sort of appeared on lots of other TV shows. So, what were your thoughts then, Julian, on the pilot episode of the Robocop TV show?
Well, it's not great.
No.
I mean,
we've got to judge this on a curve that this was a TV show compared to the feature films we have previously reviewed.
yeah, and a 1994 TV show, right? I mean,
Yes.
this is not peak streaming.
No.
Yeah, I don't know what continuity this exists in. I mean, it has flashbacks to the movie, but Officer, this new replacement for Robocop's partner is, obviously intended to, replace the original partner. You can kind of justify that, like, OCP's chairman has changed, but, like, Johnson's gone. I'm not sure that this is really the same Robocop. I think this is kind of like a timeline, that has a sort of slightly different, nicer version of Robocop 1. Murphy doesn't seem all that traumatized.
Yeah. This is the TV show. I mean, this TV show, let's be clear, follows the template of Robocop 3. That's the sort of the template we're looking at. This thing, there's a kid sidekick. There's, as you say, that sort of softer, nicer Robocop and all that kind of thing. It's going to aim for sort of the splatter punk kind of thing that was sort of silly at the start of 3 is here because they've got, like, there's a gang called, I forgot what they're bloody called now, something stupid, pound dogs or something like pound pups. I forgot the hell they're called now. Um, but yeah, it's got all those sort of trademarks of things like like you say, but it also heavily wants to remind you of in particular, the first film.
Hmm.
The data spike is back from his fist. As you said, there are flashbacks to the first film.
It
There's
uses the
the
music.
It uses the music. Again, I thought the score is kind of clever in the sense it's trying to be it's cheap and very television, but it keeps having those sort of flashbacks. It uses the cues and stuff like that. So it was fine, and it uses the sort of news, to give us 3 minutes, we'll give you the world. It's got all those little bits and pieces in there, but it's not sharp enough or horrible enough or mean enough in any shape, way, or
Yeah.
form to actually have that bite.
Well, this it's like they took away all of the meanness of
Yeah.
RoboCop, which so identifies the first two films.
Hmm.
The sheer sadism of the criminals, and of this world, and sort of tries to make like the John Wesley Ship Flash series out of it.
Well,
Um, it's very superhero-y.
that well,
It's
that you've nailed on my head. I looked at this because I was like, what year did this come out? And it came out in 1994. So I wanted to go back on this. So this came out in 94. The John Wesley Ship Flash series, which only lasted a season, um, came out in 1990 and was a bit of a byproduct of trying to sort of follow up Batman, the Batman sort of thing. In addition to that, though, we also had, obviously, don't forget there was Lois and Clark, the Adventures of Superman, that came out in 93. Yeah, 1993. You then had like Highlander, and there was just all these shows that were trying to sort of be that were trying to get that thing, weren't they, for TV? What? How can we get the movies on TV? And this RoboCop is right there in the middle of all that, and you sort of look at it and go, "You've tried your best," and there are certain scenes that kind of work, and it echoes the film. I mean, even like RoboCop's introduction in this is almost a sort of a light-hearted version of his part
Mhm.
of that montage in the first film, the hostage negotiations in the
Yeah.
mayor's office. This time
And
it's
they even
Pudface
steal
Morgan.
the car being blown up like RoboCop 2, like they're
Yeah.
clearly stealing, sequences.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but that's part of the problem is even when they do that, it's sort of like half effective, but everything is toned down.
Mm.
Something I like is RoboCop having other weapons in his other
Mm.
leg. Um, so he's got these little like explosive discs that he can set to a certain charge. And then ridiculously, he has to shoot them to set them off. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so that he's
That's a
firing
design
his
flaw.
gun at
Yeah, yeah.
something. That's clearly why. Um, and also, if you're exploding it with a gun, how does setting the charge work? Like, if it's got the explosive in it, why is the explosive not being set off at a 10 out of 10? But he uses these throughout the series. Um, yeah, so I mean, I like the idea of him having other weapons at his disposal.
Mm.
Much as I don't have a problem with having in RoboCop 3 the machine gun at your
Mm.
hand. That's fine with me. I think that's it's a little toyetic, but it makes sense for this character. But it's more the problem that and I've seen several of the later episodes. It is amazing how often criminals he's confronting, he always targets them with his gun, and you sort of see the targeting sequence. Every single time you see the targeting go on them, and you see RoboCop could shoot them with the gun. But it is amazing how many criminals are standing under chandeliers
Yeah.
and next to bookcases. It happens
I,
a lot.
this show early on. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I watched this and I was like, how are they going to sort of set this up? Like, how are they going to introduce? Because the films are adult films, but this show is clearly aimed at a younger audience, as you say. Like, it's that nicer version. And then so when he has that introduction, like, the car gets blown up, but like Robocop steps out. It looks kind of cool. They've got that thing with the foot coming out around the flames, which you've seen in both Robocop but better in Robocop 2. Um, and then he sort of when he goes into arrest Pudface Morgan, who really has come out of like Dick Tracy or the Flash TV show. Like,
I thought the same thing. I mean,
yeah,
that's literally the Dick Tracy villain,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And then the news says he fell into acid or he fell into chemicals, much like the Joker, due to his own accord. You know,
yeah,
like it really wants you to know, like RoboCop did not cause this.
yeah. No, it's so on the nose with so many things. But you're right. Like he walks in, and as he's walking up, it shows his three prime directives again. And then he walks in, and he sort of, as you say, sort of faces off. He shoots one guy, and it's a chandelier that comes down or a bookcase. But then when he grabs him, and it sort of says appropriate level of violence, and at the bottom it's got like lethal, and it sort of like then just ticks up. It's like da 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 arrest mode, and then just basically throws him out of a building. Which I'm still like, okay, that's that's acceptable for a TV show. But that told me straight away that I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what this is. This isn't like going to be the boys, which is actually something I thought about whilst watching this. This isn't going to be, as you said, like current prime streaming. This is prime time American television. This is aiming for that sort of like sweet spot of like almost like a you know almost like a family sort of entertainment where they can be like anyone could watch this and it's going to be enough that it's going to be a fun time sort of thing.
Well, and primetime television in '94, right? I mean,
Yes.
people, are watching this on actual television, right?
Mm.
Broadcasts. This isn't like Hannibal,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, this is really old school. Yeah, I mean, and that throwing the villain out of the ways that contrasts with RoboCop's the end of that montage sequence with the mayor, is really clear. It tells you instantly, okay,
Yeah. What they're
that's what
aiming
this
for.
is going to be. I feel like they missed a chance to like just add a fourth directive that says use the minimum force required. And that
Mm.
would explain a lot, and you'd be like, oh, okay, I can kind of get this in the same universe. It's also just everybody's so nice to each other.
Yeah.
So, like one of the key changes here, and this persists through the whole series, is that OCP is not evil.
Yeah.
OCP has some bad guys working for it, but the chairman is kind of like a bumbling old man who is he is a recurring character through the whole show. In fact, I think the third episode is like RoboCop takes him on a cruise around town, to show him like what it's like, and they're palling around together. Like he's going on a ride along with RoboCop. Like it's mind blowing
Yeah.
how OCP is like whitewashed in the series.
Well, what I thought was funny is that there's the character of Chip Chaikin, who's like the corporate villain in this, who's sort of like Dr. Cray Malado, sort of. He's the one that brings Malado into OCP to make Neuralink, and he actually says there's a line, and again, like being on the nose, and I really want to sort of it highlighted something for me very quickly again. Is he says there's a line, and Malado talks about the limitations of working in academia. And Chaikin very quickly just says, "Well, this is the corporate world. This isn't your boring, stuffy academia. We've got the guts and the budget to go out, and we've got to do it. And it doesn't. I don't care who tries to stop us." And I was like, "Yeah, you're trying to be like the bullish characters from the first film,
Right.
but you're coming off like a cartoon villain." And that was the problem for me was the guy who's playing RoboCop. And some of the others really, but like so Richard Eden, who's playing RoboCop, and Madigan, and a couple of others, like when they're doing their bit, there's a tone that's like, we almost want to respect the legacy, like we're going to do some of the action, we're going to keep this kind of serious. When Murphy has his flashbacks about his family, or like him being shot and killed, like. And you have those cues, the musical cues from the original film and stuff. Like they're trying for something that then has like a bit of weight and a bit of heft and maybe even like a bit of darkness about it. And then it'll cut to Chaikin and Malado, and they're kind of like tiptoeing around to do something like cartoon, like a pantomime villain, you know. And the fact that like an executive of OCP goes out with this street gang to kidnap homeless people, and then he's the one that injects the person with like the paralytic drug. And then when it goes wrong, he has the body in the trunk of his limo to hand it over to the street gang for them to get rid of. I was like, oh, this is like night and day. Like you've got pantomime cartoonish villains that are on par with like the Flash, even like Batman 66 level at some points. Like later on, they turn around in unison and like have like a shocked look on their face, and I was like, oh, this is awful. This is not the same show that I saw like 2 scenes ago, where Robocop was, arresting someone or having a conversation with someone. I'm like, that's a different kind of show. It's so tonally inconsistent. It was laughable.
It's clear to me that they're thinking RoboCop's a superhero.
Oh yes.
And you know, comics were a huge influence on RoboCop 1.
Hmm.
RoboCop 2 and 3 are co-written by Frank Miller. It's clear that the sort of RoboCop's got deep roots in comics, and certainly Judge Dredd, but also superhero stuff, but dark, cutting edge superhero stuff.
Yeah.
By RoboCop 3, they're turning it into just a hero you can show your kids. This is the TV version, who has to be even more sanitized, and this is what you'd get for a superhero series in '94 on broadcast television. The villains, as you say, like Pudface keeps coming back, in later episodes. I mean, you have these kind of like recurring villains, because RoboCop's not killing them, and RoboCop, he much like RoboCop 3, right? Like the tragic origin functions much like Batman's tragic origin. That's kind of there, and now RoboCop can do what he does, which is just get shot and be invulnerable to bullets, and just disarm people with minimal force.
Yeah, it's spot on. This is the thing that's interesting is the journey that this has taken is almost inevitable as a franchise. And I think this is a superhero TV show, and as I said, like this is akin to The Flash or Superman and Lois, New Adventures of Superman, Highlander, all those TV shows where it's like baddie of the week in a silly situation. Like I haven't watched these, but I can guarantee you there's a courtroom drama one. There's going to be one where like I don't know, like Alex Murphy's suspected of murder. There'll be one where there's like a identity confusion over something else and all this other stuff.
Yep.
There'll be all the typical kind of ones. An assassin that's hired to come and take out Robocop. All those, I'm sure you could then lift and shift and say, instead of Robocop, this is now being done by The Flash. This is now being done by Superman or whatever. Like it feels very generic in that respect. And that's fine. The thing I would say I kind of respect is like the suit still looks pretty good. Like there's still stuff in this. I'm like, oh, well done. Like you haven't cheapened out on certain things. Like it looks kind of cool. But one of the things that this move, we said very early on, the very first film, was almost like the undermining of the superhero narrative. We were very sort of keen. We were keen to highlight that RoboCop's a part of the system. Like he gets his identity back at the end of RoboCop, kinda, but he's still owned by OCP. He's still a part of the police that are sort of a part of the problem. Like nothing has been resolved in the grand scheme of things. It's still the problem. And then the ante keeps upping and so on and so forth until the TV show is just him week to week solving crimes and fighting villains and becoming the hero, the superhero thing. And you're going, oh, okay, you've kind of accepted your mantle as the superhero, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it's embracing the narratives that the early couple movies were all about deconstructing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of have this theory that, and I know you have a similar theory, that sort of like all franchises descend to parody.
Yes. Yeah.
That they sort of all become parodies of themselves, and people falsely remember, the early ones and whatever. I mean, in this case, people know those first RoboCops were ultraviolet mean,
Yeah.
movies, but it becomes like, well, the essential thing here is a robot cop.
Yes.
Let's take out the satire, take out the corporate stuff. What people are here to see is a guy, a robot cop, a cyborg cop who's in, that suit, you
Hmm.
know, has friends on the department, and you have OCP, and that's just kind of like the setting. OCP is like Arkham Asylum now. It's just like that's a fixture of this fictional environment in which, there's kind of like parts of Delta City that have been built, but there's still, crime-ridden old neighborhoods. I mean,
Mm.
this is just part of that environment. It's a playset that this character is moving around in. All of the tone's gone, all of that's gone. But sort of all these franchises kind of do this to one degree or another.
What I thought was, you just, I agree. I mean, like we've said this about like Die Hard. Like Die Hard, literally by the fifth Die Hard film is, the first film has him running across sort of like a floor of glass, and it almost takes him out. And then the third one has him sort of like leaping through panes of glass as a helicopter's about to crash on top of him into a swimming pool. Like, yeah, the same with like Rambo. Like, Rambo's the other one. Sort of again, it becomes a parody of itself into like levels of ridiculousness. Like they all do. Like this is what these franchises do. Um, but what's weird about this is like you said, that there's clearly like this. There's like a push and pull watching this TV show or this TV pilot. Is that you say, what's the essence of Robocop? What is it that sort of is that makes a Robocop? Well, Robocop's got to be in it. All right, so you've got the robot cop, and you've got, like you say, the supporting cast of the police force, and now you've got a kid called Gadget, who is going to be the sort of like the child sidekick thing, which is a TV staple. But then they're like, oh well, we've got to have Newsbreak. We've got to have sort of like, that's got to be in there. So they have that, and they try for that kind of thing. It's awful. Like it doesn't work. When they'll have a story, then the woman says, "That's awful." Now into other news, and they try to do that thing, and you're like, okay, you haven't got the setup that the others had. And then they try the advert. Now the only part of this that works is the adverts. There were two adverts in this that
Yeah.
I really liked. And the first one is
Commander Cash.
Commander Cash is brilliant. I thought Commander
Yeah.
Cash, I was like, the cartoon advert that's like, go spend here's an OCP credit card, help your economy by spending money. It was brilliant. I thought, like, in 1994, I was like, this is a clever little nugget that appears. That would not be out of, like, there'd probably be a little difference to it, but like that would not be out of place in one or two, like in Robocop one or two.
Yeah, the animation style is definitely sort of like 94. It's
Yeah,
very much sort of like Ren and Stimpy kind of,
yeah.
alternative animation. But you're right. Like I actually think the TV segments, I see what they're doing. They don't work as much as
Hmm.
RoboCop 1 and 2, but they're doing a sort of like TV broadcast version of that, and they kind of work,
Yeah,
and I like them and the commercials much better than, most of the show.
yeah.
Um
Well, the one
but
for the
yeah, so
child
Commander
services,
Cash, you're right.
Commander
Yeah.
Cash is good. The child services one as well, which feeds into the plot because that's where Jimmy Murphy has gone. Um, but I like the fact that in the advert, it has her singing the woman who runs Child Protective Services or Child Services, and at the bottom it says tax deductible. Give your tax deductible donations, and it's an OCP corporate, an OCP,
Hmm.
and I was like, good, that's good. Like, it gets, sometimes this still gets the joke of what this is.
Well, and
Um,
I think this first episode, the two-part pilot, has mean touches that the rest
mm,
of the show doesn't. And
mm,
one of them is this orphanage that,
yeah,
like
yeah,
this woman running an orphanage who has all of this publicity showing her smiling with children, and one has a rainbow in the background, actually is turning the kids into gang members, and totally corrupt behind the scenes. And that's a little bit of that RoboCop mean spiritedness, but
yeah.
it's sort of lightly done. Like
Mm,
she sort of like gets she sort of gets exposed, but nothing really happens to her that's mean and terrible, right? Like,
Yeah.
but there are these vestiges of the RoboCop meanness that just kind of like snuck into that pilot or didn't get erased totally.
No, I agree. Like whoever's writing this, and this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. There's the push and pull, and I keep seeing those moments, and I'm going like, "Oh, someone's trying to sneak shit into this. Someone gets it and is trying to bring that into this." And for example, like, as you say, that the woman who runs the child services, being found out. A prime example of this is Gadget is one of the runaway kids that's there with child services, but she sort of sneaks back in, and you see this woman, and you find that she's linked with Chip Chaikin, who's the baddie from OCP, and she is basically feeding kids into this street gang for whatever purposes, and then basically he then uses the street gang for different purposes out on the streets. So it's all this corrupt thing. You go, okay, that's quite a good idea, and then they're clearly coming up. They have a joke about sexercise, and she shows a bit of leg, and he's like, yeah, that's it, baby. And she says, beg for it, and you're like, oh my god, this is kind of racy. And then he just goes and makes all these like weird noises, and you're like, oh no, this is weird and like uncomfortable, and like you've undermined everything you were trying to go for. Like, and it keeps doing that, and I'm like, this is just weird. Like they keep trying to slide things in, and somebody else comes and knocks it down. It's like, no, you can't have, this can't be too adult. This can't be too dark. We've got to throw silliness in. And
Well, it's interesting because that also I had forgotten about that. You're right, totally about how that would not be out of place in the first couple movies, but it would be raunchy and messed up, right? Like here, you get the setup. It acknowledges that sex exists, but they're cynical about it, but then it becomes kind of just silly, right? It doesn't go anywhere. But what's interesting is I don't think the existence of sex is in the rest of the series. Like,
no.
This is not, this is not something that continues. Like these are elements that kind of like get in that pilot that bring it closer to the first couple RoboCops.
Yeah, and you can see them being sort of like drifted out. I mean, the introduction of like Neuralink, this AI brain computer. I was like, oh, this is so desperately 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, okay, cool. I think again, if I was like 13 watching this, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. This is a good idea. Like, I'm enjoying it. But like, you watch it in 2025 and you are like, oh, yes, this is a very aged show. I mean, it's 35 years old, or 30 years old, really. 30, yeah. So, but yeah, it did make me chuckle thinking back to my childhood, going like, oh my god, yeah, like this was what we thought was like cutting edge.
Well, I thought about that, and I thought, like, in some ways, the whole Neuralink controlling every aspect of the city thing, like that predates sort of real smart homes and stuff like that. Except the way they think it works is like you just set up this computer and it like can control anything electronic in the city, all the lights, and I'm like, are those things connected to Neuralink? Like you have old light fixtures and power plants and stuff. Like those are not electronic. Like those are not connected to some sort of central computer. Those are not controlled remotely. Yeah, so I mean, it's really weird the way that Neuralink works. Yeah,
yeah, and it eventually has a like a holographic interface that apparently can just appear anywhere.
Okay, this is one thing I want to talk about. So the plan is to kidnap homeless people, extract their brains, and again a little touch of meanness while they're still alive, although it doesn't show it, doesn't
No,
but you
but
can imagine what Verhoeven would do with that.
Exactly. Yeah, that felt like a throwback.
Yeah. But of course these homeless people's brains aren't working, right? Sort of like Robocop 2, the others aren't working for Robocop 2. So they use the secretary and off camera kill her and put her brain in this little, round thing. You never see it, but you're told her brain is in there. And then she appears as a hologram. Now, much like RoboCop 3, where I'm like every scene has something that annoys me. A lot of RoboCop is shooting through doors. Every time there's this weird thing the show does, even in later episodes, where like every time there's a double door that people have to burn through or shoot through, they always shoot through both sides of the door.
Yeah.
Like you could just burn through half of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so puzzling to me. I'm so annoyed by it. But anyway, like another thing like this is the homeless person who appears as a hologram briefly and then dies and fails, appears as a giant head in the hologram. When the
Yes.
secretary appears, she appears full body.
In a brand
And
new dress.
but they refer to her as a giant head
Yeah. Yeah.
because the effects haven't been added yet. Um, yeah, but she survives the episode and she comes back off and on through the rest of the show. Yeah, so there's this like AI woman who's like running the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very strange. But she could, like you say, she could project herself around town
Anywhere.
as a she has superpowers.
Yeah.
She's another superpowered character they've added to the superhero TV show.
I assumed, having not seen it, I was thinking like, oh, she's going to be almost like the Oracle kind of character. Like she'll be feeding Robocop information and all that kind of stuff. This does come to a question I kind of had about this the whole thing. So you said about the timeline. You said about this isn't the sort of in continuity. Like is this in continuity with the first film or whatever? Like where does this pick up from, or like where does it follow on from? Because we've seen OCP collapse at the end of the third film. So and the old man's dead. So is this sort of ignoring the third film and just going to mimic it sort of setup? But then it doesn't have an Officer Lois, so and there's no acknowledgement of her death. So did she die? Like this, the whole thing is kind of mixed up. But the thing that really sort of was really starting to bother me was the timeline of how the time scale of how long has RoboCop been about? Because at the start of the show, when they talk about Pudface Morgan being arrested, they say RoboCop arrested him 5 years ago. That's when the accident happened with the chemicals and stuff. So okay, so RoboCop's been around at least 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But let's accept he's been around a little bit longer than that because they're going to say that the other films took place and maybe those other incidents took place between the short films. Whatever. Let's say it's been 6-7 years. Okay, since
I'm not sure the other films took place, but yeah,
no, but let's just say
right.
let's say it's
Minimum
been
5,
minimum
more
5.
realistically 6, 7, something
Yeah,
in there.
right. So let's say 7 years. All of his flashbacks of his son are the same boy
Yes.
that we see in the TV show.
I know.
So I'm like, this kid has got some sort of like genetic disorder where he's just stopped aging. Like it doesn't make any sense. But the other thing is like Delta City in the first film is an idea. Delta City by the show is partially complete with like skyscrapers and these beautifully futuristic looking things. I'm like, and there's a
monorail.
Monorail, yeah. There's a part of me going, OCP might be onto something. They've been able to construct half a city in 7 years. That's kind of impressive. So yeah,
Well, they built RoboCop, right? I mean, and they're not totally evil in this show, so
yeah, but the time frame on this really weirded me out especially for the boy. I'm like, is he supposed to? Oh, yeah, I'm like, is he supposed to be older? Like, I don't get it now.
Yeah, the flashback bothered me too. I think he's sort of like supposed to be older because he's old enough to be involved in gangs, right?
Yeah.
So like, I think he's supposed to be sort of like preteen at this point, but they don't bother to get a child actor for the flashback,
No.
So yeah, that is, I think that's more of a continuity error. But yeah, I mean, I don't think RoboCop 2 and 3 have taken place in this universe.
Mm-mm.
Obviously, a version of RoboCop 1 happened, but OCP wasn't as evil, and he had a different partner and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's kind of it's vague and weird, and um, yeah, it doesn't provide an awful lot of drama. I mean, you said before the show like you would have watched this in '94. I would have too. I watched all of those Flash shows.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, me too.
This is what we had.
Mm.
It's what we had, and I would have wanted to support this and get more of this kind of content. but it's not terribly interesting.
No, and I think that's part of the problem. It becomes very generic very quickly. And even when it reaches a climax where there's almost like a countdown, and they're going to sort of I can't even remember what the whole finale's bubbling towards, but it doesn't really matter. But basically,
So
like
they're trying to
Robocop's.
delete the girl who's
That's
running the
right.
Neuralink.
That's
You know.
right. And so
Oh, and
Robocop's.
so okay, so the way they show this is by like a rain of sparks falling on her. That's just like, why is that how you've
That
chosen
made me
the
laugh
thing
so
that's
much.
the thing that
I
the
love
thing that
that.
really upsets me about this is that they have at this point in the pilot they have forgotten that she has a physical brain.
Yes,
So they're talking about deleting her program. There's a physical brain next to this
I got
machine.
the
Like
same.
nobody ever mentions that again.
I'm so glad you said that because when they were trying to, he brings in a virus
Yes.
and he says this will delete any unnecessary information. That means you, and I'm going like, cool. Her brain's in a box over there. Like I'm not entirely sure why this is a problem. Like this is
Right. Open the box.
yeah,
Step one. Step two. Smash the brain.
yeah,
Robocop 2 style.
yeah. It was just so bizarre. Um, yeah, but I loved the sparks coming down. Again, I was like, oh, this feels so like of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to visually represent it. That's fine. But I kind of liked that that, in that same nostalgic sense of going like, oh, I've seen this on like, Star Trek Next Generation or, um,
It would have looked better on Star Trek Next
yes,
Generation. I
yeah,
mean,
it's true. Um, yeah, it just did make me chuckle. Um,
yeah, that is especially egregious. I mean, forgetting that there's a brain and now it's like, well, they're in the computer, so and they're talking about like the percentage of her that's been purged,
yeah,
and all this stuff, and it's like there's a brain next to you.
yeah.
Like, come
Yeah,
on, how is
at least,
this a
and
thing?
it's fine if that's what you're gonna do, but like, at least have it like an explanation of what we are doing is running through the brain and removing certain synapse connections that will remove the personality. There's something to say, but like, yeah, just introducing a disc and it was, yeah, is
No, they
funny.
clearly forget what's
Yeah.
going on, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The other thing that made me chuckle is Robocop's obviously beating a path to OCP headquarters to do this, to save her and to sort of arrest Doctor Crazy Malado and Chip Chaikin. But outside, waiting for him, is this street gang, and the street gang have sort of put up some sort of barrier. But obviously, this is an external set, so the barrier can't really do much. So it kind of just looks like a bonfire in the middle of the thing. And there's like,
yeah.
you could walk around that. That's not a great barrier. However, again, props to them for this scene. This again, I was like, when he has the fight with this street gang,
Yeah.
I was actually like, oh wow, this is you've put some effort into this. It kind of looks cool. There's some interesting
There's some
scenes.
stunts.
There's some
There's,
stunts.
motorcycle jumping over flame and stuff.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
guy on rollerblades that comes after him, and like Robocop like choke slams him and stuff. Like there was some. I was
Yeah.
like, fair play. You've done this is kind of fun, and this is what I mean. Like there was and then it'll cut to Malado and Chaikin doing something else, and you're like, oh yes, sorry, that's the Batman '66 element. We've got to go back to that, haven't we? Every time you get close to being really good, you've got to introduce that silliness again. So, but
Yeah. I mean, so it's not even the RoboCop headquarters, though. It's the public works station. And I was really confused by this through most of the pilot, where
mm,
I thought they were in OCP headquarters, and
I
that's where
thought
they've got
the
this AI thing and Neuralink. All of that is, and you sort of see when she's spying with the cameras and she's
yes,
reading lips. There's this sort of like 2001 How lip reading sequence. And
yeah.
a public works van comes in. And then later on, they reveal all of those scenes have not happened at OCP. They've happened at this little public workstation, so they don't have to film the shootout at OCP Tower.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all these little bits like that that kind of made me chuckle. Where I was just like, okay, this is it keeps teasing good and then goes to something a bit silly, or it's got silly choices. Um,
I
but
like the OCP hijinks of kind of like the chairman having to surrender, control of OCP to this, coup. Except again, like he's stationed in a public works thing. Like, it all kind of like almost works but doesn't, but you kind of see what they're going for.
I can, yeah. This is the bit where he was like, the thing where he goes into the guy's office, and this is where you go, well, this is what would have happened in the original RoboCop. Like, you'd have um, what's it like? He comes in. What's it? Milado comes in and says like, they talk about Delta City being run by Metrolink. Or it's called like Metro thing, and he's well, Metrolink is run by Neurobrain and Ira
Yeah,
Neurobrain.
Neuralink is the dystopian one in our timeline.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I run that. And yeah. In fact, Milado actually proves a point in this because he's exactly like, yeah, Musk has proven that this is the case. But basically, he comes in and says, I run this, so therefore I run Delta City, and therefore I have complete control of OCP, hand over OCP. And the fact is, he does it. That it eventually happens as part of a bit of a plan. But in the original film, the old man would have gone, to like Dick Jones or something, sort this, and then a couple of thugs would have turned up at this guy's wherever the hell he was and shot him to death with machine guns or like with shotguns or grenades. Like the fact that he concedes to this mad scientist is kind of the biggest grievance I have with this. Where it's like, no, OCP, the old man from OCP would not concede to this.
See, I think this is a different. It's played by a different actor. Obviously, the original's dead, but I think this is a different chairman. I think this is a kinder, gentler chairman who is sort of out of his element in, the sort of mean spirited, OCP culture.
Yeah.
His first instinct isn't find this guy and kill him. His first instinct is, I mean, he does come up with a plot to foil it, and it almost doesn't work. There's this weird bit with Robocop losing his memories, and then he's got him back, but yeah, he doesn't have the killing edge that the original chairman had.
No, well, we also highlight there's a whole plot point we haven't sort of highlighted is Robocop gets shot through the heart with a big gun, and they again pretty good special effects. He has a hole blown right through him, and they show it, and then they put him on ice, and they say like, we've managed to save the organs, the biological matter, but they can't afford to bring him back online, so he's put on ice. And I was like, okay, interesting choice for your first episode, but fine. And I like the fact that basically bringing Robocop back online then becomes a
part of the corporate plot, right? Like
yeah.
It's a good idea, right? That it sort of evokes, especially like RoboCop 2,
yes,
with them not wanting to bring him back online, and but then they have a good self-interested reason for doing so to prevent the OCP takeover. No, I like that too. But then again, like the execution is never quite there, right?
Exactly. Like it always feels like, again, like you almost get like an A or a B for effort, but like the end product's not quite what I'm hoping for. The other thing that this I literally again laughed out. I lolled. I laughed out loud when it happened because I could not believe they did it. So there's a moment when they take the body of the homeless guy that's been killed and had his brain removed is in the morgue, and the doctor pulls him out, and they're talking about it, and Robocop says, he basically looks into his eye and says, in many cases the last seen image before death is captured on the back of the retina, and then he captures information and uses like Blade Runner level, he then uses Blade Runner level technology to like zoom,
enhance the image,
enhance, and gets an image of Dr. Milado. I wanted to touch on it because it made me laugh, because that's a real thing, optography. Now, it's not a real thing as in it works. No, it doesn't. Right. It's utter nonsense.
Yes.
But in the 19th century, in the Victorian era, they thought it was true. And so they would try and take this thing called an optogram, which is a photo of the retina, and they actually tried to do it to solve crimes. we were a weird species that we believed this crap. But yeah, it's true, optography. And I was like, Robocop's going to use this tech. He's going to use optography.
Except it works. It's a
Except
major
it works.
plot point. That's like Robocop
Yeah.
has no detective skills, right?
No.
His detective skills is this optography bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know this is weird, but we've also seen several movies where they take like a scan of the dying person's brain, right? And this we always hate this shit, right?
Yeah.
It was in G.I.
You
Joe,
you
the
remember?
first
Yeah,
G.I.
but
Joe live action.
yeah. Well, you remember my feelings towards this kind of thing when we did Black Mirror. So you know,
Mm,
it starts
yeah.
to grate very quickly on me. But yeah.
But especially optography, the idea that our retinas are like a computer and freeze the last image or something is so mind-bendingly stupid.
Yeah.
Um,
But also the fact he can then plug that image into a computer to then
mhm,
enhance it and get a clear image of someone's face
yeah.
was
But
hilarious
this
to
is the
me.
summary of his detective skills. This
Yes.
is how he catches and then he goes to arrest that guy, and for the rest of the entire pilot, he knows that guy is the bad guy because of this nonsense.
Yes. Is
But
it
but all,
admissible as evidence? That's what I kept thinking. Would this be admissible as evidence? Is this something we can sort out? I don't know.
Well, don't forget the OCP official who injects the drug that paralyzes the homeless people. As soon as he's injected it, he takes the canister with the fluid in it and tosses it in the alleyway while this kid is watching. And you think,
That's
why would
never,
you do this?
and that's never used as evidence. Like she doesn't go looking for it or anything.
Well,
Yes,
RoboCop partner finds it,
yes,
and but it's not needed because of the optography thing. Um, But it's just like these criminals are so incompetent. It's so dime store. It's so low budget. It's so weird that like there are elements of this that seem from earlier drafts that were closer to RoboCop 1 and 2 where,
yeah.
it was a more mean-spirited pilot. But then there are elements like this that you think, how did this survive? Like this is dime store kind of writing stuff.
I'm almost convinced on what you said there. I'm almost convinced that there was a version of this written that was a meaner, darker version.
Yeah.
I think there was a draft of this that was very close. I mean, I'm not saying like really close, but I think there was a much closer version to the films, and then later versions have come in and
Yeah.
made those
Toned
changes,
it down.
toned it down,
Yeah.
introduced the humor because it all feels like it's inserted. That's the point of it was made that like whenever they have the humor, it always feels inserted. It's like here's a dark scene, joke or silly scene, and that bit is kind of what bothered me. So
Well, and the RoboCop quips from RoboCop
mm,
3 are even more here.
yes,
And it's really painful hearing this kind of like semi-digitized voice,
yeah,
reciting these, Roger Moore-esque quips.
and that feels I don't know that feels
Like an addition.
yeah, again
Yeah.
like someone's come in because again there are scenes where dialogue seems like added in like the rest of the scene seems to be doing something and they'll add this bit in and you're going like that that doesn't feel right, like that feels inserted as you say. So um not always to its detriment. There are scenes that you go, oh, the levity kind of works here, or there'll be something else. But there's so many where I'm like, this was. I actually thought like this is darker. There's a version of this that must have been. But yeah, unfortunately, it
Well,
got.
and at the end, the villains are captured, you know.
Hmm.
They're still alive, so they're able to return in later episodes.
Yep.
OCP is saved, and the chairman is back in charge. And that's not a Pyrrhic victory like RoboCop 1 and 2. You feel like, no, that's good. I'm glad that chairman is in charge. Like he's a little in it for himself or whatever, but he's not a bad guy.
Mm-mm.
He's a kind of like slightly doddering old man, like he's a grandpa. Like OCP is kind of fine in this.
They've even changed the logo. And
Yeah.
I thought that I noticed that. I was like, the logo's different. This other thing. It does feel like they've tried to soften OCP as being like, instead of being the villain, the sort of corporate overlord villain, like you say, they are just an entity that exists that is there to provide villains.
Right.
So
And have corrupt elements, but the bad apples don't spoil the bunch. And
exactly that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate that revision of the logo. I love the original OCP
Oh, the
logo.
original logo is
Yeah.
brilliant, and I think that's yeah. So I agree. Um,
But it's
it's
like they've taken all the messages, all those themes of RoboCop, right? The
mm,
existential, like, what is a man? What can the soul go through and survive? Or, is he really Alex Murphy? How much torture can somebody go through in a, world where you can be put into a robot body? All of that elements gone. The sort of like, existential or metaphysical sort of aspects, those are all gone. The anti-corporate stuff, the meanness, all of that's gone. And what's you're left with is RoboCop the superhero, and OCP is just kind of, set dressing.
what one thing I wanted to ask actually about this is we've addressed on several occasions Murphy's relationship with his family. Like especially in two really sort of like, especially the opening two sort of really hammers it home. It's like, he's stalking them, he's sort of there, and then his wife comes in and sort of like the whole thing of like they made this to honor him, that thing. So they've kind of addressed it, but you've now got the flashback. They're not going to do the wife much, but they are going to do the son. So there's all going to be these flashbacks. Jimmy Murphy is introduced as a character. He never sees RoboCop. They don't. I don't believe they share a scene. Madigan always interacts with him. But I was like, this feels like this is going to be a long running thing. Is it going to be like
Yeah.
eventually, like in the final episode, will it be like Murphy will get to reveal himself to his son or something like that? I was like, is this going to be like a plot thread for the whole? Well, it felt like this was going to be a plot thread for the whole series. That was what I was thinking.
It is. I mean, I think that basically all of these characters return.
Mm-hmm.
They don't all return in the same episodes, right? So
No.
like his wife returns. I mean, there's an episode where
Okay.
he realizes that his wife and son are on welfare, and is kind of fucked up by it.
Mm.
Pudface is going to come back. The chairman is a recurring character. Even the corporate guy from this,
Chip
returns.
Chaikin.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Chip Chaikin's back. So like they all of these elements come back, but they come back. They're not in every episode. Like that woman inside the computer, she comes back, but she's only every few episodes or so.
Right.
So, and at the end, this is 94, so there aren't really, I mean, it's an episodic universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, the season finale is a attempted assault on the president of the United States who's visiting Detroit/Delta City. They can never quite get straight, like whether it's Detroit or Delta City
Yeah.
now. Like you see shots,
Of
on a
both.
map, and it'll say
Yeah.
Detroit, and then someone else will refer to it as Delta City in the next scene. They can't quite get this straight. But the president is visiting, and there's an assassination attempt, and they kind of bring everybody back, but they just foil the assassination attempt. That's the finale. So maybe if it had run more than one season, you would get some kind of plot developments and character
Mm.
development, and maybe try to go somewhere with the RoboCop story. Um, that was not in the cards for the first season. Nothing
Okay.
changes.
No, no, no. It just felt like it almost feels like they're maybe laying the groundwork then for that. That's something that they could do. Okay, we're going to cross that
Yeah.
bridge. It's there if we want to do something with it at some point, which I'm fine with. That's cool.
Well, I think a lot of this is kind of like setting up balls that can be, plates that are spinning that you can pull down for an episode, and you can feature the wife and kid. You can, have OCP be a part of it. You can have this woman running the Detroit, technology be a part of it. You can kind of pull all these elements down to generate story ideas
hmm
for an episodic show that's got to produce, in this case, 23 episodes. If you count the pilot as two, um, that's 23 episodes, right? That they produced of this thing. That's
Yeah.
more than these days a season runs 8 episodes. Like this is like a 4 season show in
Yeah,
terms of episode count. But so, that's the way they would set up a series was, you have a lot of different elements that you can use here or there, right? You could do a holodeck episode, you could do a, whatever. So that's clearly what they're doing. But they're not really intent on going anywhere with
no.
any of these plots.
I think the
At
thing
least not
is,
yet.
no, I think that's the thing. Again, I will shout out fair play to them on this thing of like they did, let's say, 23 episodes. And Robocop, it doesn't seem like a cheap prospect. I'm sure there are bottle episodes, I'm sure there are cheap episodes and that kind of thing. But like, you've got to do that suit repeatedly. You've got to do damaged versions of the suit. You've got all different bits and pieces. Like, there's going to be other things coming in. I'm sure this wasn't a cheap show, and some of the sets look a bit crap, but overall, like, it's not a bad TV pilot for 1994. I won't dink them for effort in this case. Um, and I think you're right, but to do 23 episodes is quite good. And it does feel, if that's the case, if nothing changes, and you're right, this is episodic television, a lot of it is the case of like, you take the toys out for the episode, you play with the toys, you put them back so that they can reset for the next episode. Each one written by somebody different, directed probably by somebody different. This is or the early days of sort of season arc television, where like the big bad for the season is so and so. I mean, that sort of came in a bit later. The X-Files started to introduce it, but like Buffy and all those kinds of shows started to bring in this idea of episode of the week, but also an overreaching arc that would end at the end of the season. And I feel like, as you say, if this was to go on for another season, that's the kind of thing that they probably would have done, where it would be like, oh, we're going to resolve this with the sun or whatever. Like that makes the kind of sense you're going to make. So yeah, it sounds interesting, but I was looking at these shows, the other shows I was comparing to, like we said about like The Flash and Highlander and Superman and Lois. There was another one which I don't know if you ever saw. It was a British TV show that got exported to States called Space Precinct. That was actually kind of cool, ran for one season. Although all these things were trying to sort of hop off the back of films and other IPs and stuff, I do kind of think that this was a period of like transition for television, because this is the same time, like 1993, we get the X-Files, and we get there's other shows that sort of come out around that time, and you go, oh right, cool. They were really trying to push what broadcast television could be
Yes.
around this time, and so I do kind of sort of appreciate, although I'm going to poke fun at this, and it doesn't work as well as I think they wished it had done. But still, it's not just another cop show. It's not like Columbo Point Two. They're really trying for something different. And I thought, fair play for them around this time. I got sort of laud that like this is the same time. Do you watch Dinosaurs, the sitcom?
No.
Did you ever see it? Like again,
No.
done by Jim Henson, where like it was literally like it was basically The Simpsons, but with a bunch of dinosaurs. But it was all live action and stuff. It was great. Like I watched it, I thought it was great. Like its age hasn't aged great in some respects, but I do kind of respect what TV was doing. This you can see, like this is the same. 1993 was the start of like DS9,
Hmm.
that became an incredibly influential and dark show towards the end. Did a lot of different things for Star Trek. I don't know, yeah, not the early to mid 90s. You can feel that something was changing with like broadcast television that has been
Yeah,
taken
I
by
agree. I
streaming.
mean, I do think that there was more pushing of television in the 90s. And you're right that it's kind of a transitional period, like sort of post streaming, you have a lot of room for you have bigger budgets, you've got room for, real arcs. If
Mm,
anything that's gone too far, so it's hard to do episodic stuff.
hmm
This is constrained by episodic format and budget. And you just look at these other episodes and they're just, oh, okay, like Pudface is back and he's doing an assassin. It's like, all right, it sounds like a description of Batman 66 or,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but but they're trying to do RoboCop on TV.
Mm,
And, I think that the stuff, having seen some of the later episodes, I think the stuff that really resonates with me is when they're really going for things. Um, there is, I want to highlight a few episodes here. There's an episode called Inside Crime, where there's a reality TV show, sort of like Cops, except that reporters follow the criminals around and film their crimes live. Um,
I mean,
and
that's prime RoboCop. Like that
right.
gets, yeah.
And they say there was a law passed that protects journalists who are doing this, so the cops can't like arrest them. And so, but of course, they're working with Pudface, Morgan, who's, wants to have conflict with RoboCop, and the producers of the series, who are, OCP's television division. The chairman is saying, like, you can't do this, right? This is scandalous, this is hurting us. But to get ratings, they want to have like RoboCop on and Pudface rematching with RoboCop every week. But the thing is, it doesn't work. Like, it sounds so much better than it really is. And it really is. I mean, it's like all those salacious elements of the pilot that just kind of like don't quite work. There's another one called Sisters in Crime that addresses, it's not quite as bad as like Turnabout and Intruder of the original Star Trek, but it addresses feminist protesters are protesting OCP because of all of OCP's sexual harassment problems. Okay. And a group of protesters kidnapped the OCP chairman and forced him to do housework. Like, these could be like, imagine what Verhoeven would do with this stuff. Like, those could be amazing episodes. Like, those are such cool, wacky ideas. There's another one that brings Commander Cash in as a real character. Like, these sound like awesome. There were some episodes that were just based on awesome ideas for going salacious, going crazy, going more toward that, anything can happen, crazy edge of RoboCop. But the execution is always like, oh, there's the chairman in room. Like, there should be somebody in a stiletto heel holding, like a feather brush to the back of his head saying, like, lick it up, slave. This is what you've been doing to us for, since recorded history. Instead, it's just a guy in a cheap set, complaining about having to do the dishes, like, it's like they have these ideas, they're trying this stuff, but nothing is quite working in 94.
You can imagine the writing room where they've clearly, like, there's writers in this, and they've gone, I've watched the films, I've had this idea. Here's my satirical idea that I want to present. And it gets written, and the TV are like, we can't do this, this, and this because of ratings, or because of, we're a TV show for kids, for budgets. And there's so they probably start with like, they start with a piece and it gets whittled down, and then eventually you get what appears on TV. And I'm sure that happened numerous times.
The most depressing show to work on.
Yeah. Yeah, I can guarantee, I'm sure it was. I mean, and I can imagine it got cancelled after one season. I don't know what the ratings were, but like, I can imagine if you're a kid that's, in 94, and let's be clear, we'd all seen them on VHS, you in cinema, but like, if you're watching this 94, there's a whole bunch of kids that have seen the films and then tune into this and they're like, what is this? Like, where's the stiletto through the eye? Where's the Ed 209 blowing the crap out of someone? Like, where's all that kind of stuff? It does feel blunted in that respect. And it was funny because I watched this on Amazon Prime.
Yeah,
it's all available in the UK on Amazon Prime, all 23 episodes or 22.
US too.
Yeah. So if you do want to watch it, it's there. Go check it out. Right, you can either pay for it, but it's on Prime if you've got Prime. But weirdly, we've got adverts, so you get an advert. So as I was watching this, I got an advert for The Boys, and I was just like, I don't know if that's intentional or something. It just sort of like, here's things that are on Prime, and I was like, The Boys, and I was like, The Boys kind of feels like the TV show. The Boys kind of feels like the descendant of RoboCop. Like, it's taken the superhero narrative and it's turned it on its head. And Vought is like the OCP. I was like, oh my god, there's so much And it made me think, I was like, you couldn't do a TV show because you'd probably get those comparisons made now. But it's like, but The Boys today feels like what a RoboCop TV show should be like, and you could get away with it now. But it just made me think, I was
Yeah,
like, that's.
I think you could do a RoboCop live action TV show now.
Mm,
That would be actually really good. I think that, if there's one thing that this series does convince me of, it's that. It's that, I think going into this, I thought, oh, RoboCop on TV is just a bad idea, right? It's a movie series, right? You can't just kind of do a string of episodes. It's not going to work in that format. I think it could. I think,
mm,
especially seeing like what they're going for in some of these episodes, they've got good ideas. You can do crazy stuff happening. The problem is it needs that boy's budget and it needs that boy's ability to depict violence and combine that with a sort of mean-spirited RoboCop satire
yeah,
edge instead of the boys just sort of gross out edge. And it would be, the boys too for
yeah,
Amazon. It would be a huge hit. Um, so, I think you can do it. It's just this is 20 years, 30 years too early.
yes. Oh no, exactly. I think, and I wonder if I'd like to see some of those early scripts that was written that you'd be like, I wonder how close they are to what, they wanted to do. Yeah, I would love to see a live action Amazon or HBO or Apple TV, whoever's got the guts to do it and do that kind of thing would be great.
Yeah.
Like you say, it'd be amazing. I think it would. It'd be a massive hit, done right. And
Yeah, especially with lots of violence. I mean, look, the
mhm.
boys has definitely pushed that edge.
Yeah, yeah,
Lots of violence and lots of satirical, just mean-spirited, the corporations are evil. I mean, all that sort of like boys is not afraid to have, sort
mm,
of really evil bastards.
yeah.
Um, you know, fill OCP with that, do the anti-corporate angle. You can do it. Um, Clearly you can't do it with a low budget and you
No,
can't do it for broadcast TV.
no. And fair play to them. They attempted it. The pilot's fine, and it's not. I'm never going to go back to it. I don't know if I'll ever watch another episode. Um, I might
So,
try. I don't know.
I mean, I watched, several episodes for this. I could see, I forgot. I was like, oh yeah, I made it through like the first 6 episodes the last time I tried before I gave up. So I can see my viewing history. I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. I don't remember any of it.
Yeah, I
That
can
which
imagine it all
sort of
blends
tells
together.
you,
Yeah, it
yeah.
blends together, doesn't it? Yes. Yeah. So anyway, so RoboCop the TV show, perfectly fine as a 1994 broadcast television, probably should be left in 1994, to be perfectly honest. For completionists, I mean, I'm sure there's people that love RoboCop that are fans of the show, and I'd be interested to hear actually if people think that. Like, are
Yeah.
there people that have seen the series and are like, no, 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 it was good. I watched it as a kid and I still love it. Like, that's fair. That's brilliant. Like, if you've got nostalgic love for it or you've got a legit appreciation for it, fantastic. Let us know. But I think it's because I don't have any nostalgic connection to it. Yeah, I'm coming to the party a little late.
Yeah, and I don't remember this on TV. I mean, and I wonder why I don't, because I remember like Flash being on TV was a
Mm.
big deal. I think the buzz on this show was just so bad from the start that, it just looked cheap. It looked dumb. And I think, especially with the bad taste RoboCop 3 left in my mouth, I don't
And coming within a
remember.
year, and comes within a year
Yeah,
of RoboCop 3. So it's not like you've been able to, you know, like there's not enough. There's like
piggyback
distance.
off of 2 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, we shall wrap it up there with for RoboCop the TV show. But this is not. Let's be clear. This is not a low point for RoboCop. Oh no, no. We have we have still more to go. It may redeem itself. I don't know yet because the next episode we are going to be sampling and talking about the cartoons that
Yes.
RoboCop produced.
Now, interesting, there are two cartoons, right?
There
So
are.
the one that everyone remembers is RoboCop Alpha
Yep.
Commando, which is from 98, 99, had one season of 40 episodes and sort of like jumps into the future, right? At least it's trying to remove itself from the continuity, right? So we'll see how that works. But actually in 98, there was a short-lived 12-episode RoboCop animated TV show not set in the distant future. Um, so we'll look at both of those
Mm-hmm.
and see the genius, no doubt,
What year?
wonderful
What year was the first one? I'm just trying to sort of Robo.
88. 88. So between 1 and 2.
That's what blows my mind, and we
Uh-huh.
will get
And no
to
one remembers it. They remember the
no,
Alpha Commando.
because yeah, because this is prime time of when um as I sort of touched on. I think we talked before. Like there was someone going around cartoon animation studios and just whispering in someone's ear and saying, "This inappropriate IP needs to be made into a cartoon." Which one?
Rambo.
Yeah, yeah. Rambo. Police Academy. Do you remember that sex comedy about police? It's kids TV cartoon. Yeah.
Yeah.
These
There were
all
a lot of weird
happened.
decisions. Don't forget, the Return of the Killer Tomatoes.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
the Killer Tomatoes cartoon. There were
yeah.
some weird choices being made, but especially that early period. What boggles my mind about that is that early period. The first one is famous for, lasers and nonviolent, So
Hmm.
how did people? Okay, so that's between RoboCop 1 and 2. It was that quickly they produced that.
Hmm.
How did that not signal? You cannot do this, and you cannot do this. RoboCop will not work with lasers. The Pew Pew GI Joe, cartoon series. You can't do that with RoboCop. It sanitizes it. It takes everything out of it. If they had learned that lesson just from that 12 episode show, we would never have gotten RoboCop 3. Would have never gotten this TV series
Yeah.
and all of that. That whole path should have been demonstrated by that first one, but we'll see.
We'll see. I'm fascinated. I can't wait to it because yeah, not 80s and 90s cartoons, like weird ones and fad cartoons are kind of like I have a bit of a sweet spot. Like, Ninja Turtles are fantastic. What should we do? Street Sharks, Biker Mice
Yeah.
from Mars. And you're just like, I'm like, what?
The Cows of Moo Mesa.
Yeah,
You ever see that?
yeah, like, yeah. There's just, let's take an animal and do something with it and they'll make a cartoon. You got, all right, fine. Like, yeah. Anyway,
But those sharks were from the mean streets, though.
yeah.
Yeah, that was some dark stuff.
Well, Street Sharks
Uh,
was so mean streets, they had to be advertised by Vin Diesel. So, which we
there's
may
got to
touch
be
on.
some alternate timeline in which they made like an aliens 80s cartoon show. And I just want to see like some pregnant character saying like, it's gonna rip me apart when I
They
give
almost
birth
did.
to it. You've got to kill me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was not, is it 1991. They were almost made a space a Marines
Yeah, but it was
cartoon.
going to focus on the Colonial
Colonial
Marines,
Marines. Yeah.
to sanitize it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating times. Anyway, we shall leave it there for now. And we will be back to talk about the cartoons. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for following along. For those listening on Patreon early on, thank you very much for your support. Greatly appreciate it. And those watching on the main feed, thanks for coming along. If you go check out what's on Patreon, www.patreon.com/20cg media, there's a whole host of other stuff on there for like £5 a month. I think it's £5 or $5. £5 a month. You get a whole host of me and Julian discussing all kinds of things, numerous franchises and films from going back as far as the 30s, as well as other bits and pieces. So go and check all that stuff out. It's fantastic.
You'll get all of the Twilight Zone stuff that you're
Yeah.
slowly seeing on the main feed, plus more than a year in advance on the regular episodes. Like tons and tons of stuff. Not to mention your,
Other stuff I've been trying
30-minute
to do.
thoughts and
Yeah.
tons of stuff.
So go check them out. It's all good. It's all good stuff. Anyway, for now, Julian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And we shall see you again soon.
The future of law enforcement is boring.
Yeah. Right. Should we go straight into section section
Sure.
31? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm here with my partner in subterfuge and space travel, Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm recovering from watching this movie on Paramount Plus.
Yes. Yeah. We're interceding the depth that Robocop will go to discuss the depth that Star Trek will go to. We are going to have a quick chat about Section 31, Star Trek's Section 31, the recent film that was released from Paramount Plus, starring Michelle Yeoh and others. We'll get to in a minute.
Bill
Um,
Shatner is so happy. Bill
yeah,
Shatner is like, I directed one Star Trek movie and they hated it forever, and finally they hate something more.
this is the. Do you know what this is? This is what's going to allow Bill Shatner to die. He'll be like, I've done it. I've lived long enough that I no longer made
The
the
Final
worst.
Frontier is not the most reviled piece of
Yeah,
Star Trek.
is no longer the worst. I can die in peace. So he's been waiting a long time for this. Yes, Star Trek Section 31, starring Michelle Yeoh, Amari Hardwick, Sam Ratchisson, Robert Kaczynski, Casey Roll, Stephen Rygork, James. I'm not going to go anymore. There's no point for these people. You've never heard of them. This follows on from Discovery, in particular, Series 2, that introduced Section 31, a secret Black Ops military style part of the Federation, but not Starfleet, technically, that basically is there to make sure that Starfleet and the Federation can do its thing and protect it in some sort of way. First introduced, I believe, in DS9.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like 100 years after Discovery.
yeah.
So, in the continuity. So Discovery sort of got a lot of flack for, in addition to all the changes it made to continuity,
Hmm.
bringing that forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's be
And
clear,
and
like, just to be clear, DS9, a much beloved series, which I think has actually aged incredibly well, and people seem to respect it more over the years.
mhm.
Discovery, a more recent series, that is a roller coaster of a show, simply because episode to episode, it's one of the most inconsistent pieces of television I've ever watched. I kind of like it, but still, it's a tough watch from season to season, episode to episode. Um,
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, there's parts of Discovery that I think are amazing.
mm,
But there's parts that are kind of groan worthy, and
hmm
sometimes it's the same episode.
Yeah,
Certainly the ways that it upsets Star Trek continuity are
for no real
mind-boggling to
reason.
me.
Yeah, it's like we
Yeah,
want to make a modern show, but we've got to set it in the past. But it's yeah, it all got very complicated. To the extent that they literally jettisoned it 900 years into the future so that they didn't have to try and keep explaining what it was doing in the past.
and even then, still managed to fuck up
Yeah,
continuity.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's pretty mind-bending. I mean, okay, again, there's good stuff there, but this stars the mirror universe version of the original captain from
Mm-hmm.
Discovery, although not
Yep.
of Discovery.
Nope. Philippa Giorgio,
Um,
played by Michelle Yeoh. Yeah.
which in the first season they pull from the mirror universe where she's emperor. She
Mm-hmm.
becomes, Section 31 person in the second season, and in the third season is sent through the Guardian of Forever to some point in Star Trek's timeline. It's not revealed, but that's obviously intended to launch the Section 31 TV
TV show.
show, which never materialized, and instead they turned it into this movie, especially trying to piggyback on her Oscar-winning performance in,
Mm-hmm. Everything,
that
everywhere, all at
horrible,
once.
horrible movie.
Which you will cover one day.
Yeah. But uh, so they finally got it made. It's the first Star Trek movie in 8.5 years. And this is the pile of shit we got.
Yeah. I got 20 minutes into it and stopped. The thing is, and I really want to express this because you and I have talked about this before, and I've said this. We've watched things, and you and I sort of live in this space where it's like that's not for me. Yeah,
Mhm.
we'll sort of go. I watched it, realized it's not for me, so I, I wasn't getting enjoyment from it, but I know those that do, or I can see why people would, but it's not for me. I'm a 40-year-old bloke, not for me. All right. And
We're
that's
both
fine.
white men.
Yeah.
I
Not
like a
every,
lot of stuff with minority protagonists, but there are some things that are, not intended for us as an audience. We're not offended by that.
no, that's fine. There are things, yeah, not everything has to be for me. And, there are excellent TV shows that I know lots of people that like. I've watched and gone,
Mhm.
yeah, that's fine, but not really for me.
I
And
see
that's
the
good.
merits. I see, why another audience might like it, but it's for kids,
Exactly. Yeah.
whatever.
Or yeah, or you say like, yeah, just yeah, oh yeah, kids. It's for younger audiences. It's trying to pull in younger people. It's it's trendy. I'm not trendy. That's fine. If anything, I celebrate that. There should be more things for the
Hmm.
people. Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Section 31, though, as I'm sat there, and I'm a Trek. I'm not. I wouldn't go as far as I'm saying I'm a Trekkie, but I'm a Trek fan. I've watched pretty much every sort of all the series into different degrees. I've never been offended watching a show where I just usually roll out. I usually be like, not this one, and roll out. I sat through Discovery and often did think like, do I continue watching it or whatever? But I got through it and I enjoyed most of it. This like really like not so much upset me. I didn't get like but I was just like, no, this is just bad on every level. This is the kind of thing where like you and I've talked about these shows and franchises, and you make this point of no one's at the helm in many
Hmm.
cases. Like they've just make choices. They'll go with the trends, whatever's going to be popular, what will make money, and it becomes a mishmash. This feels a little bit like that, where it's like, oh, what's popular at the moment? How do we get to be trendy? How do we sort of get to be a meme or whatever the fuck they want to be? They're going to make this, and it literally like I was like, I love Star Trek because of what it does. And I know it can become repetitive. Go out, do those political. It's sort of like it's kind of left leaning, it's liberal. It'll do it challenges your politics, but it can do different things and all that sort of stuff. But it can be fun and it will do all kinds of stuff. Love that. But this just felt like pandering to like. I saw someone describe this as Star Trek, the Suicide Guardians of the Badlands.
Hmm.
And I was like, yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly what this is.
Yeah, the Guardians of the Galaxy comparison, was really clear to me. I mean, also this is basically like a heist movie. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
like assemble your team. They're all sort of Suicide Squad-esque kind of like unlikable characters, except without the James Gunn charm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. There are a number of just mind-boggling choices here. One I have to point out, when we talk about mismanagement of franchises, and we've talked about, like, say, Alien Romulus and how incompetent it is from
Mm.
start to finish, especially not on its own sake in terms of how it shoots things and how it uses audio and visual, but how it fits into the franchise. Mind-boggling. Nobody is managing this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, Similarly, we have all these Star Trek shows that take place in different eras. All of them disregard continuity to one degree or another, often for no known reason.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this one takes place in the Lost era after Star Trek Six, but before The Next Generation. There's this like 60-year gap there. All we've basically seen of that is yesterday's Enterprise with the Enterprise C, where it comes forward, one of the most beloved episodes of Star Trek
Mm.
of any series ever. This one even features Rachel Garrett as a character.
Mm.
Okay, why did you set that in this era? This era sort of like post Klingon peace treaty, like we haven't seen a lot of this. Well, you set a random movie in this unknown era. What was the benefit of that? Why did the Guardian of Forever send her back to that era? What's going on that it needs her? Nothing. You could be forgiven for watching this and not know where it's set in the Star Trek timeline.
I didn't know what it was
Except
set. I didn't know that was set there. Makes nothing
Rachel
stands it
Garrett
out.
is a young woman,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like, it doesn't talk about the Klingon peace treaty. It doesn't talk about, anything else going on at this time. Um, you've set it in this era. It now exists alone apart from everything else. There's no reference to the Kitamir Accords. There's no reference to any of this. None of that's relevant. What is she doing in this era? She's tending a bar.
Outside of
Uh,
Federation space.
a little resort outside of
Mm.
Federation space. Okay, I get that she's sort of like changed as a character. She's kind of had this redemption arc on Discovery a bit, but she's still an espionage agent, right? She's
Yeah.
still a badass, right?
Huh.
Her solution is to become Quark.
Yeah.
I, I,
Yeah, basically.
I don't understand this. I don't understand what was the benefit of making that choice. What does this lend to that our understanding of the era? What was the point to make Rachel Garrett a character? But instead of being the Rachel Garrett we know, she's a woman who's talking about like how she loves chaos and chaos is her friend with benefits.
Hmm.
It's using like jargon from the last few years
Yeah.
for no reason. I mean, again, like Guardians would do.
Oh, yeah.
Guardians would do that, and it would work or it doesn't, depending on the movie or your taste. But that's not Star Trek. I mean, this is not, like
No.
why are they using this weird slang from the last few years about how this known character is different from what we know her to be, and it's not working anyway.
No, I mean, this felt like I got as far as, and I'm not going to go back to it. So I'm never going to watch anymore. So you'll have to carry some of the plot.
That's why we have to do this episode.
Yeah.
It's so that we've cleared Section 31.
Yeah. Purge it from my system and move on. When it first starts and you get to meet, they get the whole bit on Terran, and you get to learn about how Philippa Georgiou
In the mirror
became
universe.
in the mirror
Right.
universe and how she became um, Empress. All right, you go, okay, cool, that could be interesting. Turns out it's the Hunger Games,
Yep.
basically.
Never established a continuity before,
Nope.
right? I mean, not the way it worked on Enterprise when we saw someone become Empress, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Now they've got a Hunger Games thing set up. Okay.
yeah, and she has to kill her family, which she does. She poisons their food and this other stuff. And then you find out that they all turn up, like the rest. Like there's some of the woman turns up, and she's like, "You're now our emperor." And I'm going like, "Cool. What? Why? I don't understand this. Like this mechanism seems completely out of sync with everything else.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Why would they all just follow a kid if it's about being the strongest? And all of it decided to sort of fall apart then. And I'm just like, this feels so like you're trying to be modern and all this other stuff. And that's fine, be modern. There's ways of being modern without, but like this felt so pandering to certain things. I was like, fine, cool, get to Michelle Yeoh because I love Michelle Yeoh. She's cool, right? Let's see her kicking ass and doing the bits and pieces. I want to see that. So
You were in for some disappointment there.
Yeah, well, I saw some clips of that, but basically, sort of, and to be fair, like she is in her early 60s, so I'm not expecting like her of her youth and sort of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon stuff. But anyway, it starts with her just lounging around this bar, and just littered with references to things from Star Trek history that sort of I'm like, yeah, I get that, but they're all so out of context, they don't add up to anything. But it's kind of like it
Did
felt.
you catch this Easter egg?
That's it.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, pandering. Again, I'm going like, you can put Easter eggs in the background, but no, they should be subtle. They should be like, you should have to look for them. That's the point, not have them smashed in your face. But then when you introduce
Or
this,
at least focus on your own story, right?
yes,
Like when we did Star Trek the Motion Picture, Star Trek Wrath of Khan, I mean, focus on your own story. The Easter eggs are fine. They can be integrated with your story. They can be background things, like you say. You have to have your own story. It can't be like Family Guy style, like just
No.
a conglomeration of references.
exactly that, and that was what was taking me out of the show or out of the film.
Yeah.
And then it sort of came together when you have Amari Hardwick's Olak come on, and he sort of makes this prospect of her coming back, this one last mission or whatever the balls it is, don't care. And she points out, well, you've come from this with this. Here's your group of people, and she identifies them all in the bar. And I'm like, all right, cool. So you knew they were coming. So this is like, you're the badass. Fine. But when she identifies them, I'm like, well, who are these supposed to be? Like, I don't understand like what's going on here. And then when you do get to go through them all on the ship, you've got like some shape changer played by a comedic actor, Sam Richardson, who I've seen and liked in other things. He's been in Veep and he's been in some of the bits and pieces I've liked. Fine. But he's a comedic actor and he's playing a comedic role alongside Robert Kaczynski, who plays Zeph, who's a cyborg thing, and I'm like, all right, so that's what Halo. Do we that's is he part Borg? Is this? I've never heard of this cybernetics thing being this extreme in any other Star Trek show. Okay, don't know what this is, but that felt like a real throwback to something I would get from Guardians or Badlands or something like that. And then you get Fuzz, which is an Irish Vulcan, until you then find out that it's a
Oh
biological
God.
bodysuit with a microscopic slug thing inside it that talks. And that was it. That was the moment where I'm like, oh, this is shit. This is awful. And I'm done. And I carried on watching for a little bit more. Then I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. And that's where I cut out because I was just like, none of, as you said, like this is not establishing timelines of where it fits. It's not establishing why things are the way they are. It's not establishing a load of other stuff apart from some crappy intro over the credits of like trying to provide a bit of a recap of Georgia of Philippa Georgiou. And I was insulted. I was insulted at that point of how bad this was, and I was just like, "Oh, you're comedy characters doing a comedy bit. This is bad. This is badly thought out from start to finish."
Yeah, it gets a lot worse. None
Oh,
of this. I was fine through like, it's not good, but like, yeah, it really it gets a lot worse. So did you get to the part where they explain like their agenda is to capture this guy?
hmm
He's basically like he's got, a device or something, and they don't really know what it is at this point. Um, and Giorgio, says, I've got a better plan, and she's got this like phase device. So she throws the she escorts the guy to the
When you say
room, throws.
phase, do you mean like to phase through an object, not a phaser? It allows
Yeah,
her to
to
phase through an
alter its
object.
vibrational frequency so it doesn't interact with other
So,
matter,
so the
right?
Flash. So just like the Flash.
Yes, true. But in fairness, there have been episodes like of
Yeah,
Next
yeah, yeah.
Gen, like that. So she throws this device. I don't know how she gets this, right? Usually there's, a little more, but whatever. She attaches this to herself and also throws it on the object the guy is carrying. And then they phase out and she can, she's not going to be hit by anything and she can walk out with it, right? Then an enemy soldier shows up with his own phase device and starts fighting her, right? And ultimately wins because
So he's
she's
moving at the
knocked
same.
through a
So,
wall.
so he's moving the same frequency as her.
Yes. He
Okay.
has his own phase device. How did he know this was her plan? Okay, now looking back on this, I'm able to say, all right, that must be because there was a traitor on the team who revealed this to the bad guys, and one of the bad guys was the guy in the suit who was this. But none of this is ever established. It is not even concerned about establishing any of this.
hmm
Um, and he wins and gets this object because she falls through a wall and somehow her foot stops phasing. During the entire phase fight, I'm like, why are you not following through the floor? So it's only highlighting that problem by having her foot magically
Yeah.
not phase suddenly. Like, I don't know how this works. But she gets a glimmer of what this device is, and it's like a hedron like sort of three-dimensional box, and she seems to recognize it. So this box is from her mirror universe. Now, get this. This is a doomsday box that she had made when she was Terran Emperor. She ordered constructed when she was the
Right.
Emperor. And the box, if detonated, will destroy an entire quadrant of the galaxy.
Can
The
you hear the
box is the
sighs coming
size of
out?
a human skull. Uh-huh. The box is the size of a human skull. Now it's designed great. What is the technology that allows it? We've never seen a device in Star Trek that would do this. There's never been any device that would do this or even threat that would do this that they've encountered. It's enough if like Earth is threatened by an
Mm.
invasion. Like that's a big deal in Star Trek. This is a box the size of a human head that will destroy a quarter of the galaxy if activated. Okay. How does that work? Never established. Not important. All that's important is that she had it built. Who built it? Well, some scientists who committed suicide after. So does this use like technobabble? Star Trek is the pioneer of technobabble.
Mm.
What is the technobabble to justify this? Is it like red matter from the original, from
Mm.
the original Star Trek reboot movie? No, you're never going to get any technobabble. That's just what this thing does.
It just exists. It just is.
Yep, yep. So they have to retrieve it. They're stranded on a planet. There's a traitor. Let me just say, if you don't care about anyone on the team and they all seem like, cardboard cutouts, it's a lot less interesting to wonder which of the three who could possibly be the traitor is actually the traitor. Okay. Like, not the best thing ever. Then the ending, they get a garbage scow from that planet to, fly around, which is the ship that you see in the Star Trek logo
Mm.
that precedes the movie. And then go after the bad guy as he is, working with, spoilers, the Vulcan robot, who is the traitor. Multiple characters have died, but they're after the big bad and the Vulcan robot. The big bad, by the way, turns out to be her childhood friend from the flashbacks.
The one that
Because
she the last two that she was having a
yep,
relationship with, but she beat so she become Empress. Okay.
yes. And you see that he died when he presented the Doomsday Box to her when she was Empress. He drank poison and dies in front of her. So the big reveal is that all of this is tied together to her past as Empress, and he's survived the poisoning by, you're told, just the dialogue from that Vulcan, training himself with small amounts of the poison. Okay, except he vomited blood in front of her and died in front of her. Somebody checked
Yeah.
that guy's pulse before they got rid of him, right?
Can I just say, isn't that a plot point in like The Princess Bride?
Yeah. God, I
Oh,
mean, like, this is so
wow.
bad. How does this device work? So the goal is to get this device, this scarred former friend is trying to get this device back through the like wormhole into, the mirror universe. And the garbage scow has to intersect it and stop it. Okay. The climax has Michelle fighting. The camera work for some reason during fights always focuses on other stuff, and doesn't really do a good job, but whatever. Get this. So that device, which is going to destroy a quarter of the galaxy, detonates.
What?
And it detonates in the right around where the ion storm thing that is the bridge between the two universes. So it detonates. Okay. So that's a quarter of our universe or the mirror universe that's taken out, right?
Yes, I'm assuming so because that's what you've just said is the rules.
Right. No. Instead, it apparently closes the ion wormhole thing between the two universes and nothing else. Except you have to assume that because nobody comments on the fact that the device didn't do what you set it up to do.
Oh, this is giving me a headache.
What is going on? I mean, this is like the entire movie is about pursuing. Imagine if there's like an espionage movie, a heist movie, where the entire movie is to stop the nuclear briefcase that is going to detonate a neutron bomb, then take out a continent of our planet. The bomb goes off, and what it does is it detonates the high-tech building that they're in and nothing else. And nobody even says that or addresses that in dialogue. You'd be like, what the fuck am I watching?
It, the thing, everything you're saying, right? Knowing the history of this, it kind of makes sense. This was started as going to be a spin-off. It was going to be a whole series,
Mm-hmm.
10, 12 episodes for Section 31. Couldn't make that happen. So they were like, okay, we're going to do a limited series. We're going to do 6 episodes or whatever it was, 5 episodes of a limited series. Still have 5 hours. And they were like, well, we're actually going to take that and we're going to do an hour and a half movie. And I can imagine that that arc that was there for those 10 to 12 episodes that was then brought down to sort of a limited series of 5 is now they've had to go, right, we'll drop this, drop that. Like, there's all this stuff, and you can see that they've just stripped it down to the bare bones. But it doesn't sound like they've refined it in a way that was like,
Yeah.
this was the plot we were going to have, A to B, from episode 1 to episode whatever, and brought it down. They've just sort of just taken bits out, and it's like, well, what you're left with is those key elements with some rough connective tissue. Because I can imagine, like,
Yeah.
I can imagine this over 12 episodes. Like, you would have the thing of the traitor wouldn't
Right.
be revealed until like episode 4, episode 5, and then
Right. And that's a whole episode, right? It's like
exactly.
hunting for the traitor on that planet, you know. Yeah.
And you'd have all these elements that would explain things about why she had this device, sort of like, this whole thing about a flashback about how these scientists that committed suicide and why they did it and how they felt about it. Like, I can imagine there being so much material that sort of padded this out to explain all this. It's just gone, bye bye, don't need you, and it's just gone. And so, yeah,
The device, by the way, is called the Godsend.
isn't
Very creatively. Yes, it's called the Godsend. And
isn't it?
there's
Isn't
a
that from?
character
Isn't
whose
that?
defining trait is to misunderstand things.
I was gonna say, I'm sure there's a device called that in one of the Fast and Furious films as
What?
well, which kind of explains it. So he
Quite
misunderstands
possibly. I
things
mean, it seems like everything here is stolen from
from somewhere else.
somewhere
Yeah.
else, right? Yeah. So there's a character whose defining character trait is basically misunderstanding things and then characters kind of James Gunn style correcting them. So he hears it as God's apostrophe end. So then we get a bunch of dialogue about that. Why is that in there? And explaining
Not
how this
other
device
things.
works not.
Because someone probably thought it was
Um,
funny. Someone was like, "I'm not giving up on that joke. It's a funny thing."
it's James, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is where we've gotten.
Yeah.
Um, two other things worth pointing out. One is that in the climax, how they defeat one of the ships is Rachel Garrett, who's been told by Giorgio that she is an agent of chaos, and chaos is her friends with benefits. That's meaningless, right?
Because that's how people talk. Yes.
Yes, especially in Star Trek. Um, she goes down to the waste areas of this waste ship and finds a little animatronic teddy bear in the garbage pile
I heard about this.
and
I've just
realize
remembered. Yeah.
it's been designed by a species that makes products that are not allowed to be imported into Federation space because their energy source is radically unstable. Okay, which is what you want.
Because people are listening to this, right? So here, whilst you are explaining this, I'm literally rubbing my head because this is hurting
Uh-huh.
my brain. It's that bad. This is
Yeah, an
oh,
unheard of, right? So what she does is she takes this teddy bear. What you want is you want to equip all teddy bears with thermonuclear bombs. And she basically pours
Christmas.
water on
Christmas
it
is
to
number one toy.
destabilize. Yes, that's right. That could be a great Robocop toy,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
don't expose your child to the radioactive source inside.
The number one toy for
Um,
Christmas. Yeah.
Except here, she
Mhm.
basically pours a fluid on the energy source,
Yeah.
causes it to be destabilized, and then jettisons it out, and it explodes with nuclear force. Isn't that clever? Doesn't that sound like a clever solution to introduce a previously unknown
Energy source.
exploding teddy bear in the
Mm.
cargo hold? You never know. Look, most ships have an exploding teddy bear in the cargo, right?
Again, if this was a TV show, I can see that there's an episode where they come across someone who's like a smuggler or a pirate or something, and they'll be like, we are smuggling these teddy bears or there's these things, and they're being used to actually smuggle something else, and blah, 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 blah. And it would kind of make sense. But
Well, you'd set up the gun in the first act on the wall, right?
yeah,
Instead of introducing it in the third.
yeah. Yes. Well, yeah, you'd introduce it in that exactly. You'd give the connective tissue that said, here's where these have come from, and then they will come back in a later episode. But all I can hear is like this is like someone taking 1,000 piece jigsaw and then going, do you know what? I only want to use 100 pieces, but I'm going to find 100 pieces that happen to fit together, and then I'm going to put them together, and they're going to make a shape. But it's not quite the shape I wanted, or even approximating anything good. But it's still 100 pieces I've managed to put together. That's it. That's just seems what this is. It's just pieces of something bigger, like squished together, and with no connective or explanatory tissue.
Yeah, I can't get over that there's a device the size of not even a human head that can destroy a quarter of the Star Trek galaxy and nobody explains how it works. And then it goes off and nobody notices that it didn't do what it's supposed to do.
I mean, did it
I
go
mean,
off?
that's amazing.
This is the kind of thing though where well, obviously, you watched it and I didn't. But one of the things that I seem to feel is missing from this, especially if this is the time period, between Undiscovered Country and the start of TNG. There are still villains within within the universe. Like, yes, we've had the Klingon piece. That's fine.
The Romulans are still going.
Romulans, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. The Romulans, however, are still out there, and you've got others. So why is there not like, oh, word of this has reached the Romulan, and they're the ones that are coming after this. Like, you need some sort
High
of
Council.
connection. Yeah, like it just feels so weird that they're like, oh, we're going to introduce all these new things for this period, but not utilize anything that is in either so let's say the TOS era or into TNG. Like, it just feels so bizarre to be like, I'm going to make references, but the main film is not going to touch on either of these periods apart from having a random character.
The final thing I want to say is how it ends with a wrap up with Section 31 Commander. And it's got a lot of callbacks, like, that guy leading the team is, from the eugenics wars, okay, like I get all these references, none of them add anything. I don't understand Michelle Yeoh's character. I don't understand, like is she a good guy or not? She says, like, somebody who's like built like a weapon who doesn't have anything to do or goes soft is useless, but she's obviously not useless.
Yeah.
Why are you saying that? I don't understand any of this. But the end is a, meeting of the survivors. Oh, and they introduce, so they've killed the Vulcan who's actually a robot who is, speaking in a terrible Irish accent.
Oof, yeah.
Right? Who's got the microscopic sentient microscopic life form running it. Okay, so they've killed off that character. The that character, by the way, there's a whole bit during the movie where he says he's doing this for his 120,000 children, which he then begins to list their names one by one as a comedic joke, Guardians of the Galaxy style. Okay, so that character in the robotic shell has died. That character shows up at the climax, except dressed differently, same actor, and the character introduces themselves as the wife of the Vulcan android who died. And
What?
It's like, it's like, okay, is this like a trans thing? Like, it's the same actor play, like, that's fine, but like, how do you have a robotic shell that has a wife? What were they doing before? Like, they just throw this kind of shit out there. Like, it's an idea, no one will care, right? It's cool. And then they decide to continue having adventures together. And remember that, like, space station, what that looks like that she's operating? With all those, like, sort of like coils on the outside. Those coils kind of fold up and it flies away. No one says, by the way, the space station is also a ship.
Yeah,
It just flies away because that's how all Star Trek shows end, is with the Enterprise flying away. It just flies away. There's not even a line of dialogue that says, let's take the space station. It's also a ship. Let's see what it can do. Right? They don't even bother to include that. What the fuck is going on?
amazing,
Yeah. Yeah. So
amazing.
aren't you glad that you stopped?
I feel like I've missed out. I feel like this should have been a cinema experience. Yeah, no, this is achingly bad. Everything is achingly. This is awful. What it makes me wonder though, and I'm hoping this is it, because I think what's been evident from was clearly evident from Discovery in particular was Star Trek was looking to jump into the modern realm. It was looking at all these modern TV shows and was like, how can we be sort of contemporary? We want to leave behind our captain and their ship kind of mentality. We want to do something different. We want to sort of have an overarching arc. We want to do this, we want to do that. Variety of crew. I mean, the one thing I would say about Discovery is I liked a lot of the characters more than I liked the TV show.
I agree.
And so, I sort of tuned in for them more than the show in weird ways. But I can see what they were trying to do. And then, but then what they've done is to sort of kind of rectify it. They've gone, we're going to do Strange New Worlds and we're going to bring back Captain Pike, played by Anson Mount. We're going to bring back a nice, attractive white captain and an early crew. Again, I love Strange New Worlds. I think it's a fantastic show.
Yeah. I do too.
Really enjoy it. And it's kind of funny they tried this stuff, and it feels like this Section 31 is like the remnants. It's almost like a contract obligation. Like we're going to we've got the remnants of this stuff. We've got to just tie the knots on this. I mean, we can fuck it off into space and leave it behind because it just doesn't work. But it makes me worry a little bit about the future of Trek. Like I feel that Trek's in a really sort of precarious. Lower Decks has gone. I've never watched Prodigy. I don't really know much about it.
It's terrible. I mean, people love it, but I mean, it's so for kids.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, but you could be for kids, but I mean, I watched several episodes, and the pilot has a kid surfing on the back of a starship inside a planet's atmosphere,
Oof.
weaving through, crevices of the rock or whatever. That's not how starships fucking work.
Yeah. It's for kids, as you say. I think maybe I'll try it one boy to be like, just to say that's fine. I'll ignore it. It's look, I'm going to say the same. This is what I said before. Not for me. Clearly not for me. Move on.
Yeah.
Roll out. But I feel like they're trying to kill off the thing. But the fact is, like, Strange New Worlds is the only thing in Trek left. That's the only Trek that's left now. Season 3 is coming out. This thing. I do hope they do more. The thing is, though, I watched. Because we are going to be leading up to on sort of as we go through, as after we've done Robocop and all the bits and pieces, we're going to catch up and do our sort of catching up on other things. Yeah, season 6 is films, like remakes and sequels and some of the bits and pieces we're going to catch up on, and one of them is Star Trek 3. We're going to do Search for Spock, and I was going through, and I sort of haven't watched that yet, but I watched Voyage Home the other day because I was like, yeah, I like that film. And I was just sat watching that whilst I was doing some bits. And I was like, this is fun. I love the cast. I love the crew. It's a fun film. It's very 80s. It's very sort of this, that. So like, I just enjoyed it. But it made me realise I was like, I'm more attached to the films than I am the original series of that original crew because of my age, I think. But I was like, but I'm very attached to like the TNG and the DS9 crew and other stuff. I was like, how could they transition now to the big screen again? Like you've had like the Kelvin universe with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto and all that sort of crew, Zoe Saldana, all that. And I'm like, cool. That seems to have sort of died a death or quieted down. I'm not sure. They had the 3 films. Could they really, or should they, Paramount be going, let's build up a TV franchise strong enough that we could then launch a film off the back of it? Could you do a Strange New Worlds film? And I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like, there's only like 10 episodes per season. They take fucking forever to seem to make this stuff. Is it dead as a big movie franchise? Is it done for now?
Well, I think there's that question, and I think there's the related question, just is Star Trek dead, period.
Mm.
Or should it be? I think the answer is yes. And that pains me to say. I look, I mean, you had the Tarantino script, right?
Hmm.
You had a Noah Hawley movie script that
Mm.
they did. I mean, they didn't make those, and they made Section 31. What are you, I mean,
It's a really
you
good
know,
point. Yeah.
what are you talking about? Like, I mean, the worst Tarantino script starring the reboot cast would have at least been interesting. It would have
Mm.
been something that
Mm.
I'm glad exists, even if I was like, oh, it's bad. It would have been fascinatingly bad. At worst. Noah Hawley never touched anything that isn't fascinating. I don't like all of it equally, but I don't understand these decisions. I think you can do the scripts. I think you can do other scripts. I think, and maybe Strange New Worlds is the one, but maybe just doing a different sort of script would be better. I mean, they're talking about doing this sort of like launch of the Federation movie. We'll see if that goes anywhere. An Abrams, Kelvin timeline final
Hmm.
voyage movie. You know, I think part of the problem is all of these TV shows that kind of exist at these scattered moments in the timeline, and none of them wrap up successfully,
Hmm.
and none of them fit with each other in terms of continuity. So, the most frustrating thing about this is that, you sort of need additional material to make sense of the problems with Discovery and how it fits with, say, the Cage,
Hmm.
right? Like, I mean, imagine watching Star Trek in continuity order. What a
Yeah.
clusterfuck. And you should be able to do that,
Hmm.
right? Like, it's just like they're gonna have to bridge the gap between Strange New Worlds and the original series. We'll see whether they can accomplish that. But you need basically like at least a season of additional material to make sense of the pre-discovery Cage period.
Hmm.
And the Klingon War that you kind of barely see, but don't, in the first season. And you could do that. You can commission this material and make it good and make this stuff work, but they keep doing stuff. So now you've got everything they do requires additional stuff to fix, is my problem.
Yes.
So now
Well,
you've got this Section 31 movie off in the middle of nowhere. You need other material around it to ground that in, Star Trek and in that
hmm
period. And then you've got this crew that just nothing happens to them afterwards.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. I mean, it's this way in which they keep just dropping these problematic elements into the Star Trek timeline, and none of it makes sense as a
No.
continuous story.
Well, I think that's the thing is like when you go backwards to do prequel stuff, like you said, like especially if something's made in the '60s, like you can't predate it. It doesn't work because everything's more modern. I mean, I love Strange New Worlds, but it's kind of it does not fit with the original series, like in any way, shape, or form. Like you can't have that. You really have to say you have to twist your brain to just go, yeah, okay, I accept it, but it doesn't work. Um, I mean, to the extent of right at the end, you didn't watch Lower Decks, but Lower Decks ends with like a multiversal. It's all done in humor, but there's a multiversal thing where this device is killing off each of these different universes, and one of them it
Mm-hmm.
kills off in a different universe. It kills off a Klingon that looks like the
I know.
Klingons from the first two seasons of Discovery,
Discovery.
and
Yeah.
everyone went, "Oh, this means that Discovery is not in continuity of the Prime universe. It's a different universe. More than that, it's been killed off." So like Discovery's gone. Like and the fact that like
Yep.
fans were jumping on this to try and clarify it and justify it and make it happen was hilarious. But like even the fact that there was a joke about it that it was being killed off and that these Klingons exist somewhere else kind of shows that even within the bubble of like Trek production, there's people going like, that doesn't make sense. It's crap, and it's kind of making a mess of things. We want to clean it up.
Yeah. And I think that's, I did see that. And but to me, it only accentuates the problem,
Mm.
right? It only, illustrates the problem, right? That
Hmm.
this does not make sense together. And even if you do come up with stuff that makes sense together, now you have an episode of Lower Decks that is saying, I guess there's a timeline in which the Klingons look like they did for whatever reason you explained in, a retcon. That's a mess. I mean, like
Yeah.
and the idea that you've had so many series, all of which are short-lived, you know, set, an alternate universe, with the Kelvin films and, Section 31 off on its own,
Hmm.
for no reason. Um, no benefit to the film.
No.
And so now you've got all these little elements that all have their own series with their own title. Discovery takes place in two totally different time periods. None of this can be fused together anymore. Um, and I sort of feel like, I think up until section 31, I sort of felt like I have a plan for how to do this. And now I sort of feel like,
Bollocks to it.
yeah, nobody, yeah, screw it all, burn it all down,
Mm.
nobody is managing the store. The captain is asleep at the helm, and they just keep greenlighting these projects. The projects are hit or miss, but they take place in weird. I mean, even like Picard. Picard. I love that first season. I think that first
Hmm.
season is amazing. We both have some issues with the second and third.
Mm.
But Picard is basically like, yeah, there's like 7 more years of next gen that we never saw. We already started jumping around with the movies and stuff and jumping through time in a way that really doesn't make sense. But there's another like 4 to 7 years there where everything got really dark.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Riker's off managing the Titan and like dealing with the death of his son. And like the Federation's like, fuck you, Romulans, we're not gonna help you. And Picard is resigning his commission and working on this this you have to imagine like he's on this weird spin-off show where he's trying to
Hmm.
help the Romulans, but not really getting support with Rafi and the crew, and they're stymied by Star Trek. I'm like, holy shit, like this went really, next
Yeah.
gen is really dystopian. It all ends in tears. Like, and none of that material exists yet.
And won't. Well, there'll probably be novels and there'll be bits and
Yeah.
pieces, or yeah.
But it kind of has to exist, or this timeline is like you can't watch it straight through. Like it's all really destabilized, and they keep making these choices that sort of would require so much additional material to really make it make sense to
But
fix their errors.
this comes back to one of the things we've been talking about, or you really mentioned on the last episode when we talked about Robocop, the TV show, about what happens with franchises. They end up becoming a parody of themselves, or, and I think there's an element of what I suppose I'll call it, let's call it continuity deterioration, like and it's this thing of like tonal continuity. Like you can watch the original series and then you can jump to TNG and you can sort of go, okay, you know, vastly different things, but generally I can see a continuity here, especially if you watch the films as well, right?
Yeah.
You go, fine, cool, get that, move on. All the way up to, I'd say, the end of the TNG films, right? To an
Hmm.
extent. I mean, no one needs to watch Nemesis, don't worry about that. But you're right, as things sort of go on, they have to start to shift how they're doing things because you can't just keep doing the same thing. It's like, oh, we had Kirk, then we had Picard, and now they're going to do something else. Like, okay, now we're going to do a space station with just with Deep Space Nine, which generally starts much like every other Star Trek show.
Yeah.
The
But by the
first.
way, the best pilot episode of any Star Trek series ever.
Oh, I love, yeah,
That
just
DS9 pilot is so stunningly good.
yeah, I agree. I think DS9. I sort of shift between TNG and DS9 really to sort of where I sort of sit with my favourites, but Discovery, Deep Space Nine sort of like shifts over time to become different. It brings in sort of like darker elements. It brings in like a war and brings in sort of like real sort of political elements and stuff. and benefits for it. And then, oh, we're going to go in a different direction. Or, we're a space station rather than the ship, so we can have we can become a meeting place. We're next to the wormhole and all this other stuff, right? So you can do this. Cool, that works. All right, we've got to keep changing things up because now we've done a shift, we've got to do another shift. Oh, well, let's do Voyager. So Voyager is, oh, well, a female captain in Janeway, great, but we're going to shift them to into whatever quadrant, and then they can do different things there, and it's all about the voyage home and all this other stuff. And you're like, all right, cool, but you can see that there's this constant, but the shifts are sort of enough that I can watch it and go, all right, I can see the shifts and what they all mean. But I do think the moment they did Enterprise and they went back to the beginning was when you see the sort of the wheel start to come off. And I've not watched all of Enterprise. I think I've probably watched the first two, maybe season and a bit. Actually, I haven't really watched very much about it. But I kind of felt even then going like, they're running out of ideas. They're not sure how to do this without just repeating itself. They're looking for something new. And that's where I feel that like things start to get a little shaky. And that's where it ended. I mean, that was ended, wasn't it? That was the sort of the end of that
Yeah, it was
first
the
era
only show that was canceled since the original series.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Enterprise, and I wasn't when it aired. I mean, I was out of it by then when it aired. But I've gone back, I've watched all of it. I think that, it doesn't quite fit, but you could make it fit. I agree, like the first two seasons and even the third season are pretty shaky. But they do have some great episodes. They sort of are a lot slower than like some next gen episodes are really slow.
Yeah.
But there are episodes of Enterprise that are sort of like, this is half the pace of a slow next gen episode. Like this would have been like 20 minutes on the original series. But then you get to like season 4, and season 4 is phenomenally good of Enterprise. And so then you have the problem of the seasons are kind of inconsistent. But the problem is the Enterprise finale is terrible, and I think that you could manage it post Enterprise, right? Again, you need additional material. And this is part of my problem, even with the TNG era. It's like, imagine watching it all the way through. Once you're on season 6 of Star Trek, you're watching it alongside DS9 in chronological order. The Enterprise just kind of disappears, comes back for generations. Everybody's changed between every Star Trek next gen movie, right? There's like so much stuff that happens between those movies.
Yeah.
You need some
Everyone's
material,
changed
right?
rank and ship. Yeah.
Then you've got like Insurrection, but that's happening alongside the Dominion War at the end of, DS9. At the same time, you're already several seasons into Voyager, which is sort of a mixed bag, but at least it's in the same universe. But you're like, where's the next gen crew? Then, all of that just kind of disappears. You get the end of Voyager, and then you get this weird gap year between that. And, you don't ever see what happens. You don't see Voyager come home. I mean, they just come to Earth, and a pretty lackluster finale. Not as bad as that pilot. That is a terrible pilot.
Yeah.
But then they come back, you get Nemesis, and then you're like, right, we're on to Lower Decks, then Prodigy. This is a fucking mess. Like, this needs even that stuff needs more. The original series needs, animated episodes to explain like why did the Doctor, disappear? Like, McCoy isn't in there, right? I mean, it doesn't have even a definitive episode order. Has no ending. Imagine being, an 18-year-old kid and being told to watch that stuff and going like, characters are being replaced without notice, and there's no ending to the series. Forget season finales. Like, so I mean, I feel like you could repair all of this. You need additional material. I've mapped out what you need to do it. Because I'm that kind of nerd. But for me, Section 31 is like, it just kind of broke something in me.
Yeah.
Again, it's like Alien, right? I mean, it's just like nobody is managing the continuity. How are you devoting so much time and money and creativity and Michelle Yeoh and all of these talented people to make stuff that makes Star Trek worse because it exists? That is, when Star Trek should be able to tell all these different stories. I don't mind a comedy series. I don't mind, stuff for kids. I don't mind an animated series. I think that's good that Star Trek has done that, and I think Star Trek has shown that it can tell stories in serialized storytelling, post DS9, like modern streaming style storytelling. We've had good episodes of Discovery that have done that. Um, you know, you can do this. Star Trek can adapt, but nobody's managing the continuity. Nobody's managing how this works. Nobody's imagining how all this works in trade paperback, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah,
No one
it's
ever
just
does though.
like,
This is always the problem, isn't it? Like we've said this about loads of franchises where you go, if you collect all this together, like it makes no sense. Like, we've said this about like comics are the same. Like I have every issue of a Moon Knight from, origin to now. It doesn't work. Like you can't follow through. You can't read them all and go, well, that's a definitive history. Like it makes no sense. It's the same for everything. We've said this about like even for like say Judge Dredd in 2008. We've said before like that goes from year to year. Like that has mapped from 2099 to what it was like 2046 or whatever it is at the moment, 47. They've gone for those almost 50 years. But if you're right, like if you track back, you're going like, "Wait, hang on, how did this happen in this year?" And then that character appears later on, and like, where's this character been for this many years? And they'll pop up, and then there's this other judge that will pop up, and you go like, well, they're the same age as so and so, and where have they been in all this? There's always going to be those continuity things that you go, oh, it doesn't quite work, but
but I think actually Judge Dredd is an example of about as good as you can get it.
oh
Right? I
yes,
mean, I'm not saying that aren't those issues, but it's all part of. I mean, I don't love the proliferation of multiverse timelines, and the crossovers were always an annoying issue for me, where it's like, really, does that really exist in the same
it doesn't.
timeline?
I
Or
think they've made it quite clear a couple of times. Even they've said like, ignore like silly crossovers. They don't exist in the the main timeline.
but even with other 2000 AD properties, where it's like, yeah, but so that stuff annoys me. But mostly, like maybe you do need some kind of supplementary material, but they're doing supplementary material, so we could get that eventually. Um, but somebody's kind of managing the timeline. They're not just jumping forward 20 years and showing old Judge Dredd, and then like that's never going to really, we're not really building to that, right?
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. I just I don't understand the total mismanagement of these franchises. And it's funny to me that I think Star Trek sort of was one of the last holdouts. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we've seen, Alien, Terminator,
Ugh.
Predator, all of those kind of go off in weird directions and fuck themselves up. We're doing Robocop, like Robocop has had a million weird versions of the timeline.
Deviations. Yeah.
Star Wars, has jettisoned whole entire series, as part of the Disney shift of
Mhm.
things to the extended universe, and then produced a whole bunch of new stuff, all of which creates its own problems.
Yeah.
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 Can we just get, I don't know. I feel like we used to do this better, right? Like, people managed sprawling, book series in, the
Mm.
40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and they managed to make it more or less work. Now it just seems like, well, we'll do the Guardians of the Galaxy Star Trek movie. How does it really fit? Who gives a shit?
And I think that's the attitude. As I said, I think a lot of this has been what is in vogue, what is the trend, what is it that will elevate us and bring an audience to us, and that's I think a big part of it. Of like, what is it we can sort of like chip into, and I think that's this is evident with Section 31. That's exactly what it was, or at least the end product was. You know, I didn't see her in it, but apparently even
Oh.
Jamie Lee Curtis appears in it.
Yeah,
You
she
know,
gets a cameo at the end as like
yeah,
the
as a and
their
she's obviously in,
coordinator.
yeah, and she's in obviously Everything Everywhere All at Once with Michelle Yeoh, but she was also in Badlands. So you know, it kind of sort of reeks of those things, and it makes me worry for, like you say, for what's coming next with Trek. So anyway, I think we should wrap up there. I think we tried to sort of fix it. I don't think we could do anything better with that, but
It makes me worry about all of these franchises.
Hmm.
you know, and it's ironic that we're in this era of the franchise. But I mean, even the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which did a pretty good job of managing its first, you know, three phases, not perfect, but you know, pretty good,
Mm.
um, is off the rails and
Yeah.
irreconcilable. You know, there's no fixing that.
No.
Um, and I really worry about, you know, we're in a franchise era, but one of the defining features of that era is nobody's managing it. That is troublesome to me.
And I think that's the trend. And I wonder if we'll see how James Gunn's DCU kind of does that, sort of bring it back in vogue to do those kind of things. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah. But anyway, Section 31, bag of shite. Don't bother watching it. Let it rot in
Well,
a corner.
it's kind of watchable, but you know, it does kind of make Howard the Duck look like a masterpiece.
What are you on about? Howard the Duck is a masterpiece. Yes.
It is objectively better than look. Howard the Duck does not have the device that's going to destroy the universe does not work and then not work and nobody notices or cares.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. That has more internal consistency than Section 31, and that says a lot.
yeah,
Anyway, we shall wrap up on this little treat of a show that we've done. So,
you're
as I said,
welcome.
yeah, enjoy. Yeah. So, for those of you listening on the Patreon, thank you very much for supporting, as always. And for those, if we do release this on the main feed, like, you know, well into the future, sort of like, if it's been a year since this came out, don't go back and find it, or you can, you know, if you've got half an hour and a half to kill. It's up to you. But yeah, go check out the Patreon because that's where everything else is. And there's so much material on there. Julian and I doing a whole host of other films and TV shows and other bits and pieces. Stuff that I've done on 30-minute thoughts and other bits and pieces. Some guests on there, all kinds of stuff. Go check it out. £5 a month. That's all you need to pay for so much material. Anyway, Julian, as always, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for doing this and thanks for supporting us, everyone.
Yes, greatly appreciate everyone. But for now, thank you very much. And we'll see you on the next episode.